Alec did not report that they took away all of them. And that gap is such an important factor here. And I don't think that's being taken seriously enough. What is this nonsense about JJ McCarthy and middle of the field passing concepts? We're going to talk about it and the lack of nuance how everybody is interpreting Alec Lewis's piece. Plus, we're going to talk about the NFL draft and how things are trending for the Minnesota Vikings in round 1 and finish off with a 7-round mock draft. Maybe we'll throw in a trade or two. Welcome to the Real Forno Show.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Real Forno Show, your go-to spot for everything Minnesota Vikings. Hosted by the one and only Tyler Forness, the beat writer and NFL draft guru for A to Z Sports. Bringing you the sharpest breakdowns, film study, analytics, draft scouting, and unfiltered takes on your beloved Vikings. Whether he's diving into the latest roster moves, pre-game outlooks, post-game reactions, or hunting for the next big prospect in SKOL search, he's got you covered from every angle. So buckle up, Vikings fans. Let's get into it.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the Real Forno Show. I'm your host, Tyler Forness. With me, as always, is producer Dave in the top left corner. Make sure you like, subscribe, ring the bell, because we are going to get you prepared for the NFL draft, and that's what a big part of today's show is going to be. But unfortunately, we are not live because I am in Arizona enjoying an actual break from life. I don't take enough breaks from the work stuff, which you guys know how much I love to do this, but sometimes you just need a mental reset, and I'm going to have that here while you watch this show. But I want to talk about the JJ McCarthy stuff from Alec Lewis first. And I want to kind of frame it in two different ways. One, I think Alec Lewis does a tremendous job of reporting, and I think he does a really good job of trying to understand context and nuance. But I think the way people are interpreting his piece on the JJ McCarthy stuff, Dave, is what's really frustrating to me, because when you look at it, some of it makes some sense, but I don't think it's being taken into context enough about what it could mean, because the reporting itself, it's somewhat vague. So the one line that everybody's talking about is about the middle of the field passing concepts. Applying touch to passes, a pre-draft question the Vikings themselves had with McCarthy, remained a struggle. 2025, Minnesota also removed most of its over-the-middle passing concepts throughout the season to keep his line of sight as simple as possible. So this is a really interesting line, and you can look at it in multiple ways. And I think the one way that people aren't really reading into it enough is they didn't remove all of their middle-of-the-field passing concepts. I think that's a big thing. It also does not clarify if they removed other passing concepts that are more toward the sidelines. I think there's multiple different facets here where nuance is required. Because when you take a look at what a quarterback does really well, and then transitioning them from one level to the next, you want to try and make things as easy as possible. Well, if you are getting a lot of cloudy coverages and JJ McCarthy is struggling to process the field quickly, when you have a lot of drop zones and linebackers clogging some of those passing lanes and those sight lines, the whole idea is to just make your life as easy as possible. So the Vikings removing most of their passing concepts, remember, it does not say all. Most itself can be vague. To me, most is going to be at least like 66.7%. So at least 2/3, because you're talking about a significant portion, a portion that is greater than the other side, unbalanced. Like, I'm trying to think of the right word. It's losing me for a second, but they did not remove all of them because he still threw over the middle of the field. And the one thing to remember with Kevin O'Connell's offense is it's about the illusion of complexity. They run a lot of the same concepts constantly, but they're doing it out of different formations. They're doing it out of different looks. They're doing it with different canned run play calls. And those elements are what make the offense so incredibly difficult for a young quarterback, because you have to know the same passing concept about probably like 20, 30, 40 different ways. And that itself can clog a mind and cause them to just react and process slower. So the idea is, hey, let's just make it as easy as possible for him. Let's remove some of the bulk. Defenses often will do this when they're struggling. Hey, just simplify it. Don't make it complicated. Just go out there and play. And then when they don't have to think, they just react, and then the play gets better when the actual process gets simplified. To me, that's what this is. I think taking away some of the overall concepts, which remember, Lewis does not clarify if other passing concepts were taken away. It's only about the middle of the field concepts, which I think is being overblown to an extent. They're trying to make things easier for McCarthy. And I think it's being overreacted a little bit. But it's also understandable because when you watched him in Michigan, that's what was so appealing. In college, a lot of quarterbacks don't throw over the middle of the field. You're doing air raid kind of stuff. You're throwing like mesh. You're throwing slot fade. You're throwing vertical to the outside. You're not throwing over the middle. So the fact that he was so good and comfortable throwing over the middle of the field was incredibly appealing because that's a cheat code in the NFL. Michael Penix Jr. almost never threw over the middle of the field. And then once he got to Atlanta, guess what? He still didn't throw over the middle of the field. If you can do that, it helps elevate your offense because now they really have to focus on covering the middle of the field. And then that opens things up on the outside. And it's just a way to continue to grow an offense. Well, overall, it's frustrating that they had to take anything out for him. But I also don't think we're in a position to where we need to overreact. He was a first-year starter who only played 10 games. If they took out some passing concepts for him, sure, whatever. They still threw over the middle of the field. They still ran daggered. They still ran like crossers and deep overs and posts. They didn't completely eliminate middle of the field throws. And I think that is kind of what is being sensationalized on social media right now, that he just didn't do it at all, which isn't true. You don't want some of this stuff to happen. You just want him to be able to step in and completely run the offense, no problem. But that's not how young quarterbacks work.
It's not how veteran quarterbacks work.
Yeah.
Didn't they have to simplify the game plan for Carson Wentz? They did.
They had to simplify it a lot. And a lot of that simplification was because Carson can't read a defense. He can't do progressions. It was one check down, one check down, one check down. And guess what? It was okay. It was functional enough. None of us are going to say it was good, but it functioned well enough. And that's what O'Connell, I think, is best at, is maximizing the player he has. I think they maximized Carson Wentz. You can lead a quarterback to a throw, but you can't force him to throw it. You can't make it for him. And there were many opportunities where Carson Wentz could throw the ball down the field, but he wouldn't take it. And it was a frustration in real time. I'm like, this dude is wide open. There was a couple throws in the Steelers game where it was tailor-made. O'Connell schemed Jefferson wide ass open. Now remember, wide ass open in the NFL is way different than what you and I would consider wide ass open if we were throwing the football. And
we're not talking about 10-yard separation.
Yeah,
however, there was a couple passes where
we're talking like 3 to 5 yards where it's like, hey, just lay it in. That's all you got to do. Drop it in. And you know what? Wentz has the arm talent to do all that stuff. He was a second overall pick. He was at one point an MVP candidate in his career. You're asking him to do basic stuff. And he wasn't willing to make those throws. That was one of the reasons why the Vikings lost a couple of games. With McCarthy, I like how Alec phrases it right after he talks about the removal of the middle of the field concepts. Quote, these limiting factors may not be deal breakers over the long haul. That said, NFL executives and coaches rarely have the benefit of viewing anything in the context of the long haul, which is important to this conversation, by the way. Results are required. For all those reasons, the Vikings are gauging all the quarterback possibilities with an open mind. This is where we come to probably my biggest prediction of the offseason, Dave. I have said it before. I'm going to say it again. I believe the Vikings are going to acquire Anthony Richardson via trade. That does not mean I think it's the best decision. That does not mean I think it's the right decision. I think it's what's going to happen. you look back at all the history with O'Connell and Richardson, the meeting at midfield, how much he loves what Richardson brings to the table, and the fact that the Vikings almost mortgaged 3 drafts to go get him. They were willing to give up 3 firsts and 2 seconds that I have multiple sources on that said that they wanted to go up to 3rd overall in 2023 to go get Richardson. Now, I think you can get him for pick 97 and the 5th round pick you get from the Eagles for Richardson and a 4th. That's the offer I think would probably happen because he's not worth a top 96 pick. So 1st, 2nd, or 3rd. Comp 3rd, which is basically a 4th rounder. And then you improve your 5th to a 4th. So the value's okay. It's a 4th round value. But the Vikings don't have a 4th round pick. So you got to get a little creative. And Richardson, if he ends up hitting, which is a big if at this point, this is the closest we'll probably ever see to getting another Josh Allen. Because you look at the raw tools and the ability. And what's impressive to me about Richardson was how comfortable he is in the pocket. He needs to then pair it with being able to process the field and making accurate throws, but he's comfortable and settles in the pocket really, really well. Can O'Connell maximize it? The tough part about trying to sell the Richardson discussion, Dave, is even though the tools are different, right now Richardson and McCarthy are the same player. They have the same struggles. They have the same injury issues. And they have talent that just has not been able to be unlocked for a multitude of reasons. I think it's a matter of time before Richardson becomes a Viking. And once he does become a Viking, it's going to be about, all right, who's going to win the camp battle, McCarthy or Richardson? And if Richardson wins it, well, O'Connell can then sell it to the Wolves. This was the guy I really wanted, and we tried to get him and we couldn't. And then when we got him in the building, now I maximize him. McCarthy's just tough shit. Like, that's how O'Connell would be able to sell it to ownership because he kept trying to get the guy he really wanted. And he really liked McCarthy, but he wasn't in love with McCarthy like he was with Richardson or Drake.
He wanted Drake May. Yeah.
It's like that high school guy who likes the super popular girl, but she's just not quite sure. And then her best friend, she's not quite sure. But the 3rd best cheerleader on the roster, that's my girl. Like, that's kind of what we're talking about here. I think it's just a matter of time with Richardson. If you don't like it, that's fine. I think there are a lot of flaws of trading for Richardson, but that's my read on what I actually think is going to happen. I'd like to hear from everybody else. Throw it in the comments. What do you think about landing Anthony Richardson? And if you're watching the premiere, throw it in the comments after the premiere is done, because otherwise I won't see it. I want to be able to see it and have a conversation with you guys. It's a very interesting topic, Dave, because Richardson is a very divisive quarterback for a multitude of reasons. But I do think he's a very talented quarterback, and that is where the differentiator lies. There's oodles of talent. Now he's just got to take it to the next level. Hopefully, O'Connell can get that out of him, but we'll see. We'll see. Anything else about McCarthy here before we kind of move on? Because I just think with the middle of the field concept stuff, you have to take nuance. If Lewis just would have framed it, they removed a bunch of passing concepts. I really don't think anybody has an issue with it, because it's just, hey, you're simplifying the playbook for a young quarterback who's just trying to get acclimated with the system. I don't think anybody cares. It's the middle of the field thing that I think why people are panicking. I really don't think it's a big deal. Now, if those are still gone at the beginning of the year, we need to have a different conversation.
Mm-hmm. Now, you asked about McCarthy. I do believe there's a sense in the community that somebody inside the building is trying to prep McCarthy to be thrown under the bus.
Yeah. There's somebody in that building who's trying to scapegoat McCarthy or does not like him. But I think we also have to remember, when one of the difficult parts about reporting is if you have something double sourced, you're going to run with it.
Right.
Because now and you ask the right questions. You don't ask leading questions. You ask about certain topics, but then you let them fill in the blanks. You don't try to fill in the blanks. So if source 1 says McCarthy's doing this, and then source 2, unprompted, says the same thing, well, then guess what? You're going to run it. But that doesn't always mean it's the entire situation. I firmly believe that there's 3 sides to every story. Your side, my side, and the truth, which always is slightly different than either side A or side B. Because there can be missed context because of your view of the situation that happened. I think there's some people in the building who actually believe that they should have kept Sam Darnold. And I think that is the motivation for some of this.
And it very well could be.
Yeah. Which is fine. Darnold was beloved in that building. And they decided, and you know what? I think it's hard to go with revisionist history with the Sam Darnold thing, which is why we haven't talked about it a ton. I struggled a lot with the decision. Like, well, Sam Darnold is kind of showing the elements of really being a franchise guy. And you did draft McCarthy 10th overall, but you just let this guy go. Because we were talking about Sam Darnold MVP. The way I looked at it was, if McCarthy's average, you can still win a ton of games and potentially go win a Super Bowl because of what this defense is and where you're at from a salary cap perspective. Problem was, as a collective whole, McCarthy was awful. And the quarterback play overall was awful. And you still somehow finished 9-8 with all the flaws that presented. I still think it's easy to see, hey, you bring Darnold back, that team could go to the Super Bowl. I really don't think it's that hot of a take because all you needed was average quarterback play and you win 12 games. You get what Darnold brought, you could have won 14 or 15. We're not talking crazy. We're not taking crazy pills here.
Yeah, but if we kept Darnold, the Vikings' luck would have struck in some other fashion. He would have broken his leg. The whole offensive line would go down. You'd have wide receivers. The whole works. We're Minnesota Vikings fans. How are we going to get to the Super Bowl? And what happens to, we want to develop one of our own versus taking somebody else's QB?
I'm guessing you're kind of speaking on the hubris there.
Yeah.
I think there's some, we have to justify the selection of JJ McCarthy at 10th overall.
Mm-hmm.
I really do. I think there's some of, hey, we want to maximize the salary cap situation. And I also don't think it is an unfair ask that, hey, JJ McCarthy, just go be average. Be like quarterback 16 to 20. And we can still win 12 games and make a run in the playoffs. They weren't asking him to be that great right away. They weren't asking him to be a top 10 quarterback immediately. They were asking him to be average. Which, second year, top 10 pick, that's a really fair ask. He responded by having 7 of his first 8 quarters be terrible football. And then he got hurt, which I still contest is his fault because he made himself prone to injury. And I think that's different from being injury prone. And then he came back and was okay for a few drives against the Lions, but mostly not good. Not good against the Ravens. He was terrible against the Packers. All of a sudden, now we're looking at, hey, this feels like a mitigated disaster, and Seattle's playing really, really well. It's tough. But if McCarthy can just play average football next year, this Vikings team can make a run because it's got the weapons, it's got the defensive scheme, and it's got dudes on that side of the ball too. Just be average. And I think Vikings fans will be a lot better. But we'll see. We'll see. We're going to have a lot more time to talk about McCarthy. There's going to be a lot more stuff. We're going to see how they approach free agency, how they approach the quarterback situation. That's why we always say like, subscribe, ring the bell. Because when they start making big moves, Dave and I are going to go live. And we are going to make sure that we have conversations about it. And that's something you are not going to want to miss. But let's transition over to the NFL draft, which is a big part of what the show is going to be. I'm going to share my screen, and we're going to have a conversation about my mock draft tracker. Because the mock draft tracker itself, as Dave will pop it up here on the screen, is a very interesting concept. So when I take a look at industry mock drafts, I have standards on what I classify as an industry mock draft. And those standards themselves end up manifesting in what I collect. So I don't collect every single mock draft. I collect them from reputable people and what I deem reputable sites. And some of that is going to be very subjective. But I've been in this space for quite a while. I know what sites I really view as respectable and credible, and those individuals who also meet that criteria. So through 7 weeks, so I collect starting January 1st, and then I stop collecting the morning of the NFL draft.
Hold on.
No worries. And I've collected 145 mock drafts so far. And I have them kind of separated based on different criteria. And you'll be able to see that here momentarily as Dave gets it up on the screen. I also have links. If you want access to this sheet, all you have to do is go to my Twitter, and it's in my pinned tweet. It's very interesting to kind of take a look at. Dave, is there a way to
what?
Well, it's completely cutting off all the names.
Oh, you don't want it to?
No.
Oh, shit.
Okay, so as Dave's continuing to work on getting it up, which this is one of those things where Ecamm is worse than StreamYard, Dave. Rawr.
No, because I hadn't planned on sharing the screen here. Let's see.
I like to kind of see how things trend. One of the tough parts about mock drafts in January and February is they aren't predictive. They're meant to explore scenarios. They're meant to introduce you to players who are likely going to be available at that spot. And that's where I think you can get some really interesting data as far as how the industry views the Minnesota Vikings. So, as we kind of talk about what ends up mattering with this process, you take a look at previous years. Donovan Jackson was the 15th player on the list. He only had 9 selections. For 2024, JJ McCarthy had first with over 230 selections and 830 mock drafts. And then Dallas Turner was 7th with like 45. Jordan Addison was 2nd in 2023 with over 50 of the 530 selections. There's wisdom in crowds. And it's also interesting to look at it from a perspective of as things continue to move on. And right now, the leader in the clubhouse is Avieon Terrell. 53 selections through 7 weeks, including 13 this past week. Second is Emmanuel McNeil-Warren, the safety from Toledo, at 14. Fascinating. The fact that so many people believe Avieon Terrell is going to be the guy, and I love him. He's my cornerback 1. I recommend you go check out the episode of SKOL Search that we did. Just a really interesting group of data so far, because this data itself is going to change a lot. When we look at 2025, the data, the number 1 player was Nicky Manwari. You can see him up top. He didn't have a single mock draft until January 1st. And then at the end, he had 130 selections, including 28 the last week. 18, 14, 17, 16, 12. Everybody thought that Eman Worry was going to be the guy. He was not. So it's very interesting to kind of see it from that perspective. As things continue to evolve, once you get past barriers, once you get past the Senior Bowl, and then once you get past the NFL Scouting Combine, that all manifests. So it'll be fun to watch as that continues to go around. And every Monday morning, I end up releasing a mock draft tracker piece. And that mock draft tracker piece ends up talking about how each individual player, how many times they were selected. It's fun to keep an eye on. It's fun to look at how things progress over time. And the wisdom and crowds theory shows you kind of the evolution of how each player is viewed. But it also does not mean it's the gospel. Like last year, Donovan Jackson was pretty much off of our radar. And then all of a sudden they took him. It's like, okay. They took a guard in round 1. Not exactly the sexiest pick, but from a needs perspective.
He may have been off your radar. He was not off my radar.
I'm talking the wisdom of crowds. He was not on the radar of mock drafts.
Right.
That's where I'm coming from. And it'll be fun to continue to watch how it grows and develops. But for now, we are going to transition to...
Are you ready to mock?
We are ready to mock.
Welcome to Vikings First and SKOL's Mock Draft Mondays. Who will the Vikings pick? And who's your favorite choice?
Boom, here we go. We are going to rock and roll. So what I'm going to do is, because I believe that Richardson is going to be the guy, and I think that they're going to trade for him, we are just going to make the trade right now, because I want to explore the situation of what that looks like. So Richardson in pick 113 for pick 97 and pick 161. This is what I think is the trade will look like. So we're going to rock with that. Now, should they make that trade? Your mileage will vary. This is what I think will happen. And the whole point of mock drafts is just to explore situations. So we're going to do that. Now, we have quarterback settled, and we know what that means. Quarterback being settled is a very interesting construct for the sole fact of, hey, we don't know who's going to be the guy, but they at least have 2 guys in the building who theoretically are capable starters. Now it's just about figuring out which guy is going to be that. Now, it's a really interesting discussion point at the very top here. Caleb Banks is available. So is Avieon Terrell. And Avieon Terrell is my CB1. Caleb Banks is going to be my DT1. Spoiler alert. And you'll be able to see that SKOL search here soon. Dave is working on it. Caden McDonald's also available. I don't think Caden McDonald's worth a first-round pick, because he is a great run stuffer, but I don't think he's a transcendent run stuffer. And there are other people, and I've asked them questions I haven't quite got feedback on yet. They believe there's pass rush upside. I personally have not seen that. I just think he's a Jonathan Bullard pass rusher where he's just going to push the pocket. And there's merit to pushing the pocket. But to me, that's not a first-round player. I think that is if you're really good at it, top 50. But if you're good at it, 3rd, 4th, 5th round, you can get good nose tackles later on in the draft. But if you're going to be a first-round pick, I need to see you be transcendent. You better be Vince Wilfork. That's my expectation. If you were a first-round nose tackle, you need to be Vince Wilfork. And quite frankly, I just don't think Caden McDonald's that guy. So if he's available at 49, I'm smashing. I'm taking him. Absolutely. I think it's a great value. But at 18, I think you need to prioritize more premium things at 18 than a run stuffing nose tackle, where you can get a good run stuffing nose tackle later in the draft. And to me, that's just kind of where I'm at, and your mileage may vary on it, and that's fair. But if there was pass rush upside from him that I saw, I would feel a little more comfortable with it. But I didn't see it one bit. Where I did see it was Caleb Banks, who's actually a bigger player, 6'6", 330 pounds with 35-inch arms. And he knows how to stuff the run. He knows how to penetrate gaps. And he's a good pass rusher because he's explosive off the ball. So the way we're looking at it right now is it rarer to find a starting cornerback or an explosive defensive lineman who could potentially be a guy like Dexter Lawrence, where you can put him as a 1 tech and then slide him outside to 3 tech if needed, allow him to be a pass rusher and a run stuffer? Now, will Caleb Banks turn into Dexter Lawrence as far as quality? I don't know. But this is about the range where you take a chance on that guy because he shows you pass rush upside while having that explosive element. So looking at it, as much as I love Terrell, Caleb Banks is the guy, but you have to be able to answer the injury questions. There are injury questions with him. Medicals need to clear up. And if they do, which from my understanding right now, I have not heard anything that says this guy will be a medical problem. But we'll know more after the combine when that stuff starts to kind of come out, if Banks is going to be somebody who you have to really be aware and concerned about medical issues moving forward. For right now, Banks is the guy. And now you have a high upside defensive tackle to really maximize what your team is. And that's something the Vikings haven't had since Sharif Floyd. That high upside defensive tackle. You hit gold with Jalen Redmond, but you have to be able to build around that too. Jonathan Allen's probably not going to be here after 2026. Who knows? He may even be gone this year. Maybe the Vikings find a trade partner for him, because I think that's the only way you can justify moving on from that contract after 1 year. But we'll see. 49. I'm going to be honest. Maxi Iheanacho is a very fascinating player. He's only been playing football since 2021 when he was in junior college. He's got phenomenal athleticism. He's got good strength profile, but he's still learning how to use his feet and his hands. So he would be an upside play long term. I think Iheanacho might go first round. Like, to me, this is a Philadelphia Eagles future right tackle. But it would be tempting for me, even though I've talked a lot about, I don't think we should take offensive line around 2, because I don't like the idea of taking a guy and just stashing him on the bench. But Iheanacho is the type of player where I would actually consider it, because I think he's a better player than being 49th overall.
Can he play inside?
I have never seen him play inside. He's 6'6", 330. I mean, I guess. But I don't really have a good read on if he can play inside or not. We'll have to kind of... I'll have to get back to you on that. Based on what I've seen so far, I'd want to keep him at tackle. But that doesn't mean you can't play him inside. So we'll have to revert back to that at a later date when I get full eyes on with the All-22 watching him. But the little I've seen, very, very, very good player. Blake Miller's another guy who it looks like a starting tackle in the league. Play strength issue, though. He's got everything else, but play strength is a problem. Keontae Scott, to me, is a cornerback that the Vikings would target because he's very experienced, and with experience comes a level of football intelligence, a baseline level right away, because intelligence can be learned, but when you have so much experience, it makes a big difference early on. So, and because he's over 24, it also tracks with the other cornerbacks taken in the Brian Flores era with Mekhi Blackman and Kyrie Jackson. This might be where they want to go. Jake Golday is a well-rounded linebacker who I'm going to get full eyes on here this afternoon as we record this Wednesday morning. 6'4", 240, plays more of an overhang role. I like the idea of Golday. If you want to go full-on guard, Basantis is interesting, but I don't think offensive line should be the pick here. I think you only make it if you really love a guy like Ian Aptor. D'Angelo Pons plays way bigger than his size. I don't care that he's 5'8" and a quarter, 173. That dude plays like he's 6 foot. And that to me matters. Chris Johnson is a really, really good cornerback. And this draft has a lot of players who are starters on day 2 at the cornerback position. So, and the one interesting thing with Johnson, he's much better in zone than he is man, and that the Vikings do a lot more zone than man. He can play some man, but that's where he gets exploited the most. He's in man coverage. Overcommitting with his hips, and wide receivers really using leverage against him to be able to create separation. So, being what this defense is, I think I'm going to go Chris Johnson. So now we have a defensive lineman, we have our corner, and now we can kind of look at other positions. Devin Moore is a really interesting corner out of Florida. I like Devin Moore quite a bit. He's a big guy, 6'3", 198. Really good in zone. He can pattern match. He's a decent man cover corner.
Are you trying to do the Spielman thing where you get 2 guys from the same school?
No. But I mean, you could. Spielman did it intentionally.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily buy the theory that you need to do that, but I think it's fine if you do. I wonder how much, and I know I just took San Diego State group of 5 corner and Chris Johnson, who has a lot of experience, by the way. And when he played against good competition, he did play really well. I wonder how much that's going to matter, because Kwesi only took, I think, 2 players that were outside of the Power 5 in his entire tenure. That's not many. Jonah Coleman, all Forno team member. I love what this guy brings to the table. Emmett Johnson, I have not gotten eyes on yet, but I've heard a lot of really good things, especially from an explosiveness perspective. Jennings Dunker, dude cannot bend. He cannot bend his knees. He is stiff as a board. But it's one of those things where once he grabs you, you're done. But you can get around him. And when you run a lot of zone like the Vikings do, that to me is worrisome. Lawson, explosive linebacker, but I don't love a lot of the technique stuff that he brings to the table. So you're kind of drafting a raw player. Malachi Fields went in the first round of Daniel Jeremiah's mock draft on Tuesday, which I thought was crazy. Chris Brazel. This is a player that's very interesting because look at the size. He's 6'5", 200. Now, he played at Tennessee, but he only played there for 2 years. His emerging year at Tulane in 2023 was phenomenal. And he moves a lot different than most receivers at 6'5", 200. He has the ability to drop his hips and explode when it comes to his route running. That's something that's going to manifest in the NFL. He doesn't just run that stupid Mickey Mouse bullshit that Tennessee runs. They run a lot of choice. They run a lot of deep balls. And he's good at those things. But he can do a lot of the nuanced stuff. He can run like whip routes, returns. He can run the like really twitchy style routes in short spaces, which is not something you normally see from a guy who's 6'5", 200 pounds. Different type of player. Kyle Lewis is an interesting one. Really emerging up draft boards. He is more like 5'11", but he's only like 224. And that can be a problem. Like, he's a linebacker, but is he more of a safety? I think this is more of a dimebacker kind of situation. Josh Metellus-esque role. But if you have him next to a guy like Blake Cashman, I think he can work.
A tweener.
Yeah, he's a tweener. Jacob Rodriguez, I'm going to be real. I'm out. I don't want him. I know he's become a fan favorite. He did perform well at the Senior Bowl. He doesn't pop as an athlete on film. His production feels almost all the way derived from the defensive line. And to me, that's a problem. It's fine for a linebacker to be productive because the defensive line in front of you is really good. But that's not a profile I want to draft. Plus, he's not a great athlete on film. I think his instincts are fine, but I wouldn't call them elite. Turnover production, some of it is, hey, earned because you are the one punching out the football. But that's not something I can expect you to be great at every single year. We talked about that with the Vikings having a ton of turnovers last year, and then none of the bounces went their way this year. Turnover luck's a real thing. I'm out on Rodriguez because you're probably going to have to take him day 2, and I think it'd be a waste of a pick. This is Josie Jewell with good PR. Really frustrating that this is kind of the class that we're working with. It's just okay. It's not great. Anyways, taking a look at this group, I'm going to go with a running back. We'll take Emmett Johnson because there's a lot of explosiveness to that profile, and that's really what the Vikings need. They need an explosive player. They need somebody to pair with Jordan Mason. So we'll go with Johnson there. 113, we're going to look at a group of players we normally don't look at because we don't have a 4th round pick, which is kind of nice. Xavier Scott's going back to school, but he's still in the simulator, so we're going to ignore him. Dejon Stribling's a good player. Malik Muhammad's interesting. I want to highlight Bud Clark. Safety from TCU. Had a phenomenal Senior Bowl. Rangy player. I think if you miss out on that first wave of safeties, Bud Clark, you'd like him to be a little bit bigger than 190, but he can play over the top. And that's not something the Vikings really have right now because you want Josh Metellus to be able to do the Josh Metellus things, which is kind of why I stayed away from the Kyle Lewis pick because I want Josh Metellus to be Josh Metellus. And having a guy like Bud Clark would allow you to do those things. And I think it's a really fun discussion point. So we're going to take Bud Clark because now you have a safety and you don't have to start him year 1, but maybe he earns a starting job quickly because of his ability. So now you have a developmental safety. You have a running back, you have a corner, you have a defensive tackle. I wish we had a linebacker, but we used one of our picks for Anthony Richardson, and that kind of took away the ability to be able to get a linebacker high, considering where else we went on the board. 195, Logan Jones is available. He's a popular center. He's athletic, but he's also over 300 pounds, where Garrett Bradbury was like barely sniffing 300 pounds. Jalen Daniels, that dude's going to be fun in the UFL and the CFL, but I don't think he's an NFL quarterback, unfortunately. Robert Spears Jennings is
That's a funny line. He's going to be fun in the UFL or the CFL.
Yeah. Overall, I think this is where you might want to take a center. Brailsford's interesting, but from my understanding, 290 is not his weight. He is lighter than that. So that brings a level of concern. But he's also played at that weight his entire career, and he's held up relatively well. So maybe it's just one of those situations where, hey, he's lighter, but it just doesn't matter. But I think looking at kind of where the board is and where we're going, I think Logan Jones. Take a center. Take a shot at a guy who you probably don't want to start year 1, but maybe year 2, year 3, you can get really quality play out of him. And if you don't, you took a shot in round 6. And if it doesn't work, that's fine. You don't want to waste a 6th round pick, but you can take chances later because it is not as much of a, what do you call it? Not as much capital that you're giving up. We got 3 picks in the 7th round. At this point, take players that are interesting at positions. Patrick Payton's a guy that I'm going to have circled. He doesn't have a ton of production, but he's 6'6", 255, and he's loaded with athleticism. That's the kind of guy I want to take in round 7. Hey, maybe you aren't good at football yet, but you have a ball of traits. Let's see what we can do. Let's see if we can take you to another level. I'll take that guy all day. Another one I'll take all day is Eli Heidenreich out of Navy. Listed as a fullback. He needs to put on some weight. We'll see what he looks like once he gets to the combine. If he's up close to 220, I feel a lot better. They used him as a tailback, fullback, tight end, and wide receiver in that unique Navy offense, and he was explosive. He can run a good route tree. He can run the football. He's got good vision. He's got pretty good contact balance. You could turn this guy into a Kyle Juszczyk. Sounds pretty good. And at the very least, he's going to be a really good special teamer for you. You have to think about special teams when you're making picks on day 3. So, Eli
Haven't
Heidenreich.
we learned our lesson getting academy grads?
Yeah, that's different with Andre Carter. Like, I'm not worried about it. 244. Cole Payton. He's getting like second round buzz now, which I think is a little hefty. But I do think he's got an intriguing profile. He's a 5th-year senior, but a 1-year starter because he sat behind Cam Miller, who started for 4 years at NDSU and then was a 6th-round pick. So he's got a weird profile from that perspective. What do you do with that guy? How high can you really take him? I don't know. I really don't. But he's interesting. But we just acquired Anthony Richardson, so we're not going to draft a quarterback.
And we know how well NDSU quarterbacks do in the pros. Just ask Arif.
Yeah, we won't ask Arif. Ask him how Ben DiNucci's doing. Traore is an interesting player, 6'4", 235. He is a strict pass catcher. He is not somebody that you're going to want to line up in line and block, but you can learn that and you can gain strength. Nowakowski, we've talked about from Indiana a bunch. He's a fascinating player. Trevor Pena left Syracuse after 2024 and went to Penn State. Penn State didn't help him, unfortunately, but I like what Pena brings to the table. Jaron Kanak, former, I believe, linebacker, maybe defensive end at Oklahoma, made the transition to tight end this year, and he was pretty good. This is somebody that you might be able to draft and kind of stash as your tight end 3 and let him grow and develop. The PFF grades aren't great. First year at the position. He's learning. There's going to be warts. But this is an upside play, so let's take him. Jaron Kanak. Fascinating players overall. And here we go. Pretty good grades. And a B+. We'll take that. We'll take that. Not too shabby. And that is going to be our show.
And folks, we do these mock drafts to learn about the players and what might actually happen. Who's doing what? We'll have them from a variety of different viewpoints. Who will Tyler pick? Who will the Vikings pick? Whoever's doing the picking there. And who does, consensus think should be picked? All that's going to be coming up between now and the draft.
Yeah. And we're going to have a lot more conversations about it here on the Real Forno Show, including our SKOL Search series where we are strictly doing scouting reports. A lot of really interesting elements to talk about throughout the course of this draft season. We're going to have it all here for you. Make sure Sunday afternoon, 4:05 Central, to all bloggers. You won't want to miss it. And keep tabs. Why we say like, subscribe, and ring the bell for those notifications. SKOL Search, another couple will be coming, I promise. Thank you guys so much for joining. I'm Tyler. He's Dave. SKOL Vikings.
SKOL Vikings. Like, subscribe, and ring the bell to get notifications. It helps us grow this community that we all love our Minnesota Vikings. And on behalf of Tyler Forness and myself, Dave Stefano, thank you so dearly for watching The Real Forno Show. SKOL, everyone!